Hello, everyone. Bom dia, good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. And thank you for attending this debate today, or for those that will be watching us later on YouTube. My name is Juliana Tangari from Comida do Amanhã Institute, a Brazilian think tank on sustainable food systems. And I'm very glad to start this G20 side event from the engagement groups C20 for civil society and T20, Think 20 for academia. This webinar is a co-realization of Comida do Amanhã with Josué de Castro, Chair on Sustainable Food Systems from the University of São Paulo, the Instituto de Defesa do Consumidor, Instituto Fome Zero, SEBRAP Sustentabilidade, and INCT Combate à Fome, with support from Instituto Clima e Sociedade and the Global Alliance for the Future of Food. I will be speaking English and may shift to Portuguese when speaking with my Brazilian guests, but we will have interpretation for participants attending in Zoom, both in Portuguese and in English. In your webinar controls, please click interpretation, the globe sign, and then click the language that you would like to hear. And this event is also being streamed on the YouTube channel of Comida do Amanhã, and maybe later on the channels of the other organizers. Okay, so it's a pleasure to welcome our guests today to discuss the so-called monotony of agri-food systems and how we could address this huge challenge and the opportunities arising from the Brazilian presidency of G20 this year, especially within the initiatives of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty and the Task Force Mobilization Against Climate Change. So let me tell you our agenda today. We will first hear from Mariana Macario, co-chair of C20 Working Group 2, a welcome note, and then start our first panel on the entry point of food systems in the G20 this year. Our first speaker will be Tiago Lima from the Brazilian Ministry of Finance, talking about the G20 finance track and the fight against hunger and poverty. Our second guest is Saulo Seolim from the Brazilian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who will give a brief presentation on the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. Commenting on both presentations, we will have Professor Ricardo Abramovay from the University of São Paulo, Josué de Castro, Chair. Then we will move to our second panel to understand the challenges posed by the agri-food systems monotony. So we will have Abhishek Jain, hope I have pronounced it correctly, from India, speaking on the necessary systemic approach for tackling food monotony. And then Claudia Martinez from Colombia, sharing her thoughts on the interconnection of food systems and the climate emergency. Our third panel will be on solutions from the Global South. And for these talks, we will have Yara Ferreira, bringing the experience of the city of Santarém in Brazil with school feeding policy, Janet Maro, sharing the experience of Tanzania with agroecology, and Alejandro Calvillo, sharing Mexico experience on tackling obesity. To wrap up the debate and give her final remarks, we will have Fernanda Machiavelli from the Brazilian Ministry of Agrarian Development. After the panels, we will have some time for the panelists answer the questions you will have written on the Q&A section and using the Q&A button on your Zoom screen. So please, during the panels, when you feel the need to ask or comment, please write your questions in Portuguese or in English in this specific chat box. Don't forget to indicate to whom you are addressing your questions or comment, and I will ask our panelists whenever possible to answer these questions writing in the same box. we'll have panelists from different time zones today, so I will try to be very strict with our schedule. So that's why I'm postponing all the answers, spoken answers for the very end, okay? So I'd like to thank all our speakers that kindly accepted our invitation to share so much knowledge and information with us today. I also thank our wonderful interpreters, Eldemar Malta and Michelle Goulart, who will support us. The teams of all the co-organizers and supporters who are making this event happen, and Ana Monteiro and her team of Collab, which is responsible for the technical support for this event. So let's start, and for that I invite my friend Mariana Macario, the Public Policy Manager at Ação da Cidadania, co-chair of Working Group 2 of the C20 this year, to give a welcome note on behalf of the C20. Mariana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Juliana. Obrigada, Juliana. Vou falar em português. Obrigada aos
Thank you, Juliana. I'm going to be speaking in Portuguese, and I'd like to thank our interpreters who've been working with us in this mission in a brilliant way. So, good morning, everyone. Like Juliana mentioned, I'm Mariana Macario. I'm from Ação da Cidadania, which is the foundation that fights against hunger here in Brazil for more than 20 years. It's one of the co-facilitators of the group dedicated on the debate on the food topic, poverty and hunger within C20. This group has been working for months, and what will be the recommendations from civil society about this theme that will be delivered to G20. This group has around 300 organizations from civil society from 20 different countries, which we're very proud of. And we also have organizations that are referenced in their countries. As an example, here in Brazil, like Comida do Amanhã, IDEC, and other partners and other organizations that are here with us today. 3 months ago, we started debating what would be your recommendations. It was very challenging because this is a very complex theme, and also because of the context that we are living. I'm not going to go into details now, we'll be talking about it here today, but the severity of hunger in Brazil and the whole world. And it's within this context that I'm very honored to be in this event, which is potentialized with this partnership with T20, because they have great knowledge on this theme. So congratulations, Comida do Amanhã and other organizers for creating this bridge, which is the work that you already have been doing. These partnerships have been developed throughout a long time and continues here. So I wish us all a very good meeting and event. Let us feel inspired with this challenge that's huge for all of us to guarantee a good quality food for everyone. And I would even say for our own survival in the planet as well. So I'm anxious to hear from everyone here today, and I'd like to thank you for inviting me. The interpreter cannot hear.
Okay.
You're mute. Okay, I apologize.
Obrigada, Mariana, for your kind words and for all the C20 support. And now I invite Tiago Lima, representing the Brazilian Ministry of Finance. Tiago is an associate professor in the Department of International Relations at Federal University of Paraíba. He holds a PhD in political science from Unicamp, and he is also the co-organizer of the book Brazilian Foreign Policy and the Fight Against Hunger, Lessons from the Past, Prospects for the Future. Tiago will share the perspective of the G20 finance track and the fight against hunger and poverty. Thank you, Tiago, for joining us. Over to you, and I'll let you know when your time is ending. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliana. Olá, pessoal. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you today to address such an important topic. Congratulations to all the teams involved in orchestrating this webinar. Before going on, I'd like to share our deepest feelings to the population of Rio Grande do Sul that is facing an unimaginable climate, ecological, and human catastrophe right now. Their suffering alerts us of the urgency of tackling climate change globally. Today, I'd like to shed light on Brazil's presidency within the G20, particularly focusing on the finance track and our efforts in combating hunger and poverty. But before delving deeper, it's crucial to outline the three main priorities of Brazil's presidency, which are energy and sustainable development transitions, global governance reform, and the fight against hunger and poverty. While each priority holds intrinsic significance, it is worth noting that all three fall under the overarching goal of reducing inequalities, a principle Brazil is committed to advancing during its tenure in the G20. Within the finance track, our primary objective is to address the world economy's most pressing challenges to urgently mobilize the substantial resources required for financial sustainable development and fostering a new model of globalization. It is within this broad context that sustainable food systems become paramount. Embracing President Lula's perspective that addressing poverty and hunger represents not a cost but an investment opportunity, Brazil's presidency, inheriting the legacy of prior G20 presidencies, recognizes the necessity of certain structural conditions to tangibly conceive and implement the transitions we aspire to achieve. Among these conditions, enhancing fiscal space to facilitate the implementation and national large-scale public policies is imperative. For many developing nations, this entails alleviating the debt burden that siphons a considerable portion of their income. However, it also necessitates strengthening labor productivity and creativity while concurrently fostering increased household consumption and stimulating economic growth. To achieve these objectives, key negotiations currently underway encompass the taxation of billionaires with a focus on potentially redistributing revenues to social and development programs, the reallocation of special drawing rights issued by the IMF, which certain countries and multilateral development banks may utilize to bolster their lending and granting capacity. And also, there are negotiations about the reform of the multilateral development banks in terms of fundraising and prioritizing financing policies aimed at combating hunger and poverty. Furthermore, discussions revolve around innovating financial mechanisms to bolster the availability of resources dedicated to international cooperation, covering public financing, blended finance, and novel resource pooling methodologies. Of particular significance is the negotiation surrounding sustainable finance, which seeks to bolster and expedite funding aimed at addressing the urgent climate and ecological challenges of our time. Should these negotiations prove fruitful, we stand to establish a more robust framework for steering local, national, regional, and global transitions imperative for tackling the climate crisis and advancing toward a more socially inclusive model of globalization. On the domestic front, Brazil is firmly progressing in this path, exemplified by the fiscal reforms spearheaded by Finance Minister Fernando Haddad. These reforms aimed at recalibrating economic incentives to promote healthier diets through tax reductions on staple foods, making them more accessible to impoverished populations. Notably, a healthier diet not only translates to greater meal diversity, encompassing fresher foods and enhanced biodiversity, thus helping in the fight against climate change, but also represents an investment that curtails public expenditure on healthcare and pension systems in the long run. Most importantly, people will have better conditions to earn a living and to live their lives. Having this national example in mind, we can see that if the G20's finance track succeeds in giving its contribution to increasing fiscal space and mobilizing the massive resources for promoting sustainable transitions, we will be better equipped to catalyze advancements in sustainable food systems and combating food monotony within a more enabling global economy. Nonetheless, it is imperative to acknowledge two salient features of the G20 process. While coordination among members is fundamental, achieving consensus can prove arduous, particularly in the context of geopolitical complexities. Additionally, given the annual convening of the G20 and the technical nature of negotiations on the structural aspects of the global economy, tempered expectations are warranted. This is why the emergence of the Global Alliance for the Fight Against Hunger and Poverty assumes paramount importance. While incubated within the G20 process, it will have autonomy once out of the nest. Its flying capacity, however, hinges on the quantity and quality of support it garners from its members. This is a crucial consideration in negotiating its terms within the G20 framework. The finance track firmly believes that the Global Alliance can serve as a pivotal instrument in the task of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals while leaving no one behind, especially those most vulnerable to hunger and poverty. But that is something that my dear colleague Saulo is certainly more prepared to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thiago. Obrigada. A Juliana Andrade perguntou aqui no chat depois.
Juliana Andrade asked here in the chat if you could answer, if you can answer her question in writing, because it's a specific work for government agents. But thank you for also remembering
here, and you have certainly enlightened our understanding of G20 finance work or work on investments and the finance support oriented for policies to fight hunger, as you mentioned. So now I invite Saulo Seulin, who is the General Coordinator for Food Security and Nutrition at the Brazilian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Saulo has worked at the Brazilian Mission to the Home-Based Agencies and advised the Director General of FAO from 2015 to 2017, and has been a negotiator for Brazil at various environment and sustainable agriculture fora. In his current role, he co-chairs the G20 Task Force for the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. And for that, Mr. Saulo will present the work of the Global Alliance, and that will be launched under the Brazilian Presidency. Saulo, I know your agenda is very, very busy, so thank you for joining us. The floor is yours, and I'll let you know when your time is ending. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Juliana, and thank you again for the invitation. It's an honor to participate in this event. I'm very happy, and I must say I'm looking forward to listen to the other speakers, as we just heard Thiago, but also the ones that will come after me. I'm very interested in what they have to say about this issue of the monotony of food systems to help our work in the task force. But well, I was going to start just reminding the main priorities of the Brazilian government for the G20, but Thiago has gone through that. So just coming from one of the priorities which Thiago mentioned, it's social inclusion and the fight against hunger and poverty. So Brazil, based on that, has decided to propose a task force, a G20 task force that has been working since December to create and establish this new global alliance against hunger and poverty. So as Thiago mentioned as well, the idea is that the Global Alliance will not be of the G20. It will start its life on the G20, and of course it counts with the support of the G20 members, and that's why we're going through this negotiation phase. But once it is finalized and launched, it will be open to all countries and other partners to participate. So I will start just with one clarification. I think that it's important to say that when we talk about hunger, it's just a shorthand, of course. It's just a way of saying hunger and all forms of malnutrition. So I think it's important to say that we're really not in all the documents prepared for the task force so far. That becomes very clear that we're also concerned about issues of nutrition, malnutrition, overweight and obesity, and healthy diets. So it's so just bear that in mind when we say hunger only. So the first thing to say about the alliance is that it is a political initiative. I think President Lula has said this many times, that the fight against hunger and poverty it's a political question, and it needs political motivation. and mobilization to be solved. So it's before anything else, the alliance is it's a mobilization advocacy initiative. It's an idea that Brazil has, that this issue needs to be at the highest level on the political agenda. I think that there's no one better for doing that than President Lula, from his history and what Brazil has done under his presidencies before. And so this is I think this will be one important result. It is already, I think, we can feel it already, that we are managing to bring this important issue of the fight against hunger and poverty to the center of the discussions again. And also with one important element, I think, also of linking hunger and poverty, which has not been the case in the past years. It's incredible to say so. But it is indeed, like, sometimes hunger and the fight against malnutrition is treated in silos, in a different silo from the fight against hunger. And what we're proposing is that we cannot dissociate these two, and they need to be seen as one, a part of the same problem. So what is the Global Alliance? I would start by saying what it isn't. I think it's an important clarification to say that from the start, we did not intend the Global Alliance to be a new forum for discussion. We don't want to steal the role that other important fora has, such as the Committee on World Food Security, and which is a forum for discussion of governance issues and for convergence on policies against hunger and malnutrition. We know that there's been discussion for decades on these issues, and we did not want to start again this discussion. We don't think the G20 is the place for that. So because of that, we placed at the center of the Global Alliance what we call a basket of policies. It is a set of trusted evidence-based policies against hunger and poverty. And what we discussed was the criteria for inclusion of policies on this basket. And we want to have things that have been already approved to be efficient in this area. We didn't want also to have countries making new commitments. So we are thinking about things that are already part of the government plans, or things that countries have committed already under other fora, under the SDGs, or a number of other fora. And so we just want the alliance to be a tool to help these countries implement these commitments they have made elsewhere. And so that's part of the idea. Also, the alliance will be a matchmaking platform or a broker between countries interested in implementing these policies that are in the policy basket and the providers of knowledge, technical cooperation, but also financing to help these countries. And of course, the overarching, the umbrella above the alliance is the implementation of the SDGs. We hope that the Global Alliance will be also an accelerator for the implementation of the SDGs in the short time that we have. And as you all probably know, we have been backtracking, we have been going backwards instead of advancing, especially on SDGs 1 and 2. SDG 1, of course, is the fight against poverty, and SDG 2, the fight against hunger. And the one main characteristic of the Global Alliance also is this flexibility, because it is this mechanism, this instrument for support. It can contain or support other existing initiatives under it. So I'll just give one example. We have, for example, a very important school meals coalition, which has 100 countries that are member, and many other types of institutions participating. So school meals linked to the production of smallholder farmers or family farmers, we know that it will be one of the policies in the policy basket. So countries that are committed to advance or scale up their school meal programs, they can also ask for help under the Global Alliance. So they can be at the same time members of the school meal coalitions and help and have commitments under the school meals coalition, but also be members and partners of the Global Alliance and try to get support from that, including finance support. So, I know that one of the next speakers will speak about school meals as well. I just wanted to highlight that this has been pointed out under the discussions we're having in the task force as one of the main areas where we can have positive results for investments. And of course, family farming was another area that has been pointed as something that where investment would have the best return if we are in this context of the fight against hunger and poverty. And so just to finalize, I will just tell you where we stand right now on the negotiations of the Global Alliance. We have been having technical meetings. We've had a couple of, at least 3 video conferences so far, and 1 presidential meeting in Brasilia. And we are discussing the constitutive elements or the basis of the Global Alliance. So far, the task force of the G20 and invited countries has approved a set of criteria for this policy basket. So the criteria are already there, and right now we are at the stage where we've asked countries to present suggestions. We're also consulted with the civil society, both in Brazil and internationally, for them to also present suggestions for the policy basket. So under the criteria and the template that have been approved so far. We also have a document on terms of reference of how this implementation should happen, and also on the governance structure of the Global Alliance. We also are negotiating a template for the statements of commitment of countries and other partners that will want to join, what they commit to do under the 3 pillars: the national pillar, the finance pillar, and the knowledge pillar of the Global Alliance. And finally, we're also negotiating a declaration or inception document, which will be the political document that will approve the creation of the Global Alliance and these other elements. We have a meeting next week in Teresina, which we hope will be the last one, where we hope we will advance on these negotiations, and we want to have everything done by the ministerial meeting that is scheduled for 24 July, where we will approve the set of documents, and then the official launching of the Global Alliance will be at the leaders' meeting of the G20 in November in Rio. So I think my time is finishing. I won't go into the criteria. I can respond to questions after that. But I think we're really looking forward to the recommendations of the C20 and the T20 on this issue. And we think that there's a lot of space under the Global Alliance to combat the monotony of food systems. I think there are some of the criteria are directly related to that. For example, support to smallholder farmers and family farmers, access to healthy diets, resilient to climate change, of course. I think all of these elements are there, and if policies that respond to these criteria are implemented under the alliance, we will be giving a contribution to combating the monotony of food systems. And I think I'll stop for right here for now. Thank you, Juliana.
Thank you so much, Saulo. We really appreciate the work you are doing. And it's really very important that you mentioned that this alliance don't become another international forum, right? Because technical support, technical cooperation, financing are already a huge support. And I do hope that this basket of policies that will be supported by the alliance, we will also focus in policies based on healthy diets, on sustainable diets, on regenerative agriculture, and etc. So I really took note. I took note here that 24 of July will be this big day for understanding what's going on. And in C20, we are working now on the policy pack, the policy recommendation, and we'll definitely address the work of the alliance. So let's see. Okay, so if you could please answer some questions on the Q&A section, I would appreciate. Thank you. And let's move to Professor, my friend Ricardo Abramovay. Ricardo is a permanent professor at the Josué de Castro Chair at the School of Public Health and a senior of University of São Paulo, and a senior professor at the Institute of Energy and Environment at the University of São Paulo. He's the author of Infrastructure for the Sustainable Development of the Amazon and Amazonia for an Economy Based on the Knowledge of Nature. He's the co-lead author of the bioeconomy chapter of the scientific panel on the Amazon. So, Ricardo, please share with us your remarks. You have the floor. Obrigada. Com você.
Muito obrigado, Juliana. Bom dia.
Thank you, Juliana. Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to say that it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you, Mariana, Tiago, and Saulo. Thank you for your so important interventions and the solidarity that Tiago manifested in relation to the people from Rio Grande do Sul, this climate, social, environmental catastrophe. And just let's remember that it's not only in the same week that the events in Rio Grande do Sul started, in Kenya, the flooding led to more than 300 dead, 170 people missing, and 285,000 people affected. In Afghanistan, 300 people dead and 300 children affected. And why am I talking about that? I'm talking about because I remember the first phrase that the World Bank just published in a document, and the first phrase in this document is, the system that feeds it is feeding the climate crisis in the planet as well. We can't think about, okay, my country is being able to export, it's being able to produce. The approach that we need is the approach of the food system in general. And the World Bank, besides other organizations as well, understands that the system is responsible for a third of the global emissions, being it the main factor of erosion. I'm sorry, I'm just going to close my window. There is some people working outside. No problem, Ricardo. I'm sorry, it's okay. The system is the main factor of the erosion of biodiversity in an important determinant on the pollution. So the three biggest global problems, climate, biodiversity, and pollution, they have in their food system fundamental vector. Of course, the food system can be a decisive factor for the solution. And the global food system globally was very well successful since the second part of the 20th century. Nowadays, it's a shame that 1 in 10 people are hungry, they go through hunger. But nowadays, the increasing of the calories, the availability in the protein availability is kick-started and skyrocket the obesity in the world, especially of people of low-income areas. The 60% of the obese is in the countries in low-income. Most of the causes for death between men and women, they are linked to the diet. The ultra-processed food was, and this word was something that it started in Brazil, and an emphasis nowadays when we talk about nutrition is not so much in the calories and proteins. Some people are still having that mindset, but much more in the degree of industrial transformation of those products. And this degree makes a very important part of the things people eat. It can't be even characterized as food. In the United States, 60% of the caloric management it's from the ultra-processed. In Great Britain is more than that, and that's it. Besides that, the food nutrition system makes the demand for the animal necessity be infinite, but that's not true. The protein necessities of people, they are not as the estimators predict. And that's why it's important to have this document being published by the World Forum in December of 2023 with this devastating critic I had never seen the World Forum having this kind of behavior towards these systems. So the diseases that can come from the ultra-processed consumption of ultra-processed food, it comes, and 60% of the population that suffers from obesity, they come from countries in development. 40% of the global population, they can't have a healthy diet. So the diseases that are not transmitted, that are the ones that kill around the world more than the hunger. These diseases, they need to be approached not by inventions and technological innovations or medicine. I'm not constrained to talk to you about the fact that Ozempic was chosen as the greatest innovation of 2023. This is crazy. So instead of us treating the obesity, taking care of food and diet, we are going to invent another
nós também temos um problema muito sério. A produção global, o dado é o seguinte: a humanidade conhece 7.000 produtos comestíveis, dos quais 400 são cultiváveis. No entanto, a 75% das calorias que o sistema agroalimentar fornece para o nosso consumo vem de apenas 6 produtos: batata, arroz, trigo, soja, milho e cana-de-açúcar. A mesma coisa ocorre com quer dizer, essa restrição de produtos é extremamente grave pelo desperdício, ou seja, pelo fato de que nós não estamos usando produtos que poderiam ser usados, que são muito nutritivos. Aliás, a orientação tanto do Departamento de Estado como do CGIAR, que é o principal grupo de reflexão sobre os caminhos da agronomia contemporânea, hoje preconizam muito mais que sejam cultivados produtos adaptados às condições ecológicas locais do que aquilo que vem sendo feito desde a Segunda Guerra Mundial, que é desde o fim da Segunda Guerra Mundial, que é aquilo que Rachel Carson
That is what Rachel Carson mentioned. It's a vision where we change nature based on what we want to do. This worked very well in the second half of the 20th century, but it's not working anymore. And the frequent droughts and floods and loss of plantations that we're having is a revelation of this. The social and environmental pressures from the food system is very concentrated. This study that the World Bank did shows that they did this classification of the pressures, and they said that 98% of these pressures happen in 10% of the land on Earth. And half of these pressures are only 5 countries: Brazil, China, India, Pakistan, and the US. This is a theme that we need to address. We shouldn't just think about a system that offers proteins and calories, but if it's a system that at the same time is compromising the ecosystem services, and this is also linked to the animal reproduction. We have this myth that the world has an almost infinite demand for the future, and this is not true. The studies show that the consumption of proteins in the world, with few exceptions, it's already according to what we need, and in many places it's even way over people's metabolic needs. And this is very bad because the offer of animal products is in the epicenter of this system. We are in a system where we are using up the ecosystemic resources to feed animals, and to address a need or a market which is actually giving people much more than what they need, and in many cases, making them sick. I would like to see throughout our session today the different paths of what the Brazilian government called ecological transformation plan. And that's a good name because that's what we need. We need this ecological, agroecological transformation of the agri-food system. And it's important to have this initiative that is led by the Comida do Meio Institute of putting together international leaders and references so we can have an overview of the paths that we can have for this transformation to happen in a healthy and sustainable way. Thank you very much, Ricardo. You always have very good remarks. And while I was listening to you, I was asking Amy to share the paper that you authored and that you also were able to collaborate last year in the G20 in India. And you have most of the data that you mentioned here. This paper, Juliana, is in a book, and we could share the book. There we have 27 articles as well, along with our paper. So yeah, I'm going to ask Emily to, if she has a link to the book as well, she can share that. So we can have access to other articles. Thank you for reminding us, Ricardo.
Shifting to English again, it's very important how you stress the link between inequality and the increase of hunger, the increase of obesity, and consequently the increase of non-chronic diseases, and the relation between agrobiodiversity loss and the way we eat. I think that's the very sense of monotony of food systems that we are mentioning and discussing today. So for enter this next panel of discussing these challenges posed by the food systems currently, I open with introducing to you Mr. Abhishek Jain. I hope I have pronounced it correctly, Abhishek. And from CEEW, the Council on Energy, Environment and Water in India, to speak about the necessary systemic approach to address agri-food systems monotony. Abhishek built and leads the Council's practice on energy access, rural livelihoods, and sustainable food systems. He is directing Powering Livelihoods, an initiative to transform India's rural economy with clean energy solutions. He co-conceptualized and leads the Council's research effort, Access to Clean Cooking Energy and Electricity, Survey of States, the largest panel survey on multidimensional energy access in India. He is a Chevening Fellow and alumnus of the University of Cambridge and IIT Roorkee. And thank you, Abhishek, for your time, for your patience, and for joining us today. Please, over to you. I would like to know when your time is ending. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juliana. I hope I'm audible. And it's indeed a pleasure to be here. And a very good evening to all of you from here, India, New Delhi. I'll quickly share my screen. I have slides to share just to cover my remarks. Kindly confirm once this is visible. All right. So what I'm going to talk today is really about how monotony, in particular with regards to food system, is really hurting us, and what are the ways in which we can hopefully break away from that monotony. Let me dive straight in. Globally, about half of our land is being used for agriculture, to be precise, 45%. And 80% of that land is actually being used for livestock rearing, primarily dairy and meat. And about 16% goes to crops for food, and the remaining 4% for whether it is for fiber crops, fuel crops, and so on. Now, within that 16% division of land, how much we get in terms of our calorie supply? Almost 17% from the animal source protein food, and about 83% of our calories come from the plant-based food. And in terms of the proteins, about 38% comes from the animal source and about 62% comes from the plant. Now, how does this kind of represent in terms of its monotony? Is that almost 9 crops take away the 2/3 of the total crop production in terms of the tonnage. And if you see the pie on the right, within cereals, which cover about 42% of the land, 39% is covered by 3: rice, wheat, and maize. Within oilseeds, which cover about 18% of the land, 14% is covered by just 4 of them: oil palm, rapeseed, soybean, and sunflower. Now, that's one kind of monotony that we are looking at, which is how a few crops or a few agri-production systems are dominating our global agriculture system. Now, this production monotony also ends up feeding into the consumption monotony. Our plates are becoming worse. The simple way to read this graph is the closer you are to the origin, to the center, the more homogeneous your diets become. And between 1960s and 2000s, across the world, we are seeing more and more homogenization of diet, less and less diversity. Now, this has some significant health implications. Almost 2 billion people across the globe suffer from micronutrient deficiencies. Almost 770 million are obese, which is another kind of malnutrition, right? Overnutrition. And almost a similar number, about 100 million less, is malnourished beyond the micronutrient deficiency. And it's whether it is surprising or whether it is striking, almost half of that population is in G20 countries. Now, beyond the health impact, there are some other major impacts that the monotony of the food system is creating. The first being, in terms of the environmental impacts, water. 70% of the global fresh water gets used in agriculture, and 80% of that is used only between livestock rearing and for rice production. Now, that's the monotony of water use. Almost 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from the food system, and 1/3 of that is only from the livestock, and 48% of the cropland emissions are from rice. And a third significant way is, of course, if you try to quantify the economic losses because of the current monotony of the food system, you're looking at almost a $10 trillion annual loss, which is more than what the food system contributes to the global GDP. Now, all these are the challenges of here and now, but increasingly this monotony is making our food system more and more vulnerable. And especially with extreme climate events, we started some of the discussion with that today. The food system is going to become way more vulnerable. Our yields are going to go down, climatic extreme events are going to rise, droughts, floods, cyclones are going to be far more frequent. And the greater the monotony, the less the diversity, more is the vulnerability of the food system. And why do we need really? Now, let me sort of switch towards from problem to the solutioning. And as I think about solutions in the food system, it's essential to think at a systemic level. And when we talk about systems, there is a typical framework which some of you may be familiar with. It's called the iceberg model of systems approach. Now, let me take an example here. Across the globe, we are seeing that yields are declining or are plateauing in many cases. And even where they are growing, we are adding way more fertilizer than what we used to add a few years ago to get the same amount of yields. So the event here is that, okay, the yields are declining across the globe. But the underlying pattern below this event is that the soils are degrading. And here I take an example from India. Almost half of India's soil is degraded. If you look at the soil organic carbon, if you look at other macro and micronutrients like zinc, almost 1/3 of it is degraded and so on. Now, there is a structural reason. The structural reasons are that extreme use of fertilizers over the years And India's fertilizer subsidy, by the way, has increased by 2.5 times in the last 8 years. So the excessive use of fertilizers means that we end up creating more and more dependency on that, and the declining impact of the fertilizer means we are adding more and more fertilizer to get the same yield. But all of this gets underpinned by a mental model, which is that soil is a chemical bed, is a physico-chemical bed. Now that mental model needs to be shifted if we are looking at a systemic transformation. And that shift has to happen from treating soil as a chemical, physiochemical bed to soil as a biological asset, as a living entity which is live in terms of billions and millions of microbes, which are actively making soil a living entity. And the moment you start with that mental model, instead of providing subsidy support for urea, for other fertilizers, but providing direct income support to farmers and even incentivize ecological regeneration on soils on their land. And that leads to better soil quality, which ultimately contributes to sustained production and incomes for the producers. Now, this is one example, but the food system is full of many such more examples where you need to keep going down beyond the event level issues to the underlying structures and mental models. And another reason why we need to break away the silos and look at the systemic thinking is that we often think about only Ministry of Agriculture when it comes to food system. But we do need to look at who is in the system who is trying to distribute food. Which ministries are actually otherwise related. For example, water ministry has a strong bearing on what kind of water schemes they promote and what kind of irrigation ends up happening. Same goes for energy ministries because they provide power subsidies at times for drawing water, and for the environmental and forest ministries because there is a strong link between farm and the forest, especially when the forest and farms are nearby. And then, of course, there is trade ministries involved, there is food regulators involved in terms of safety of food standards and so on. And all of these are also interlinked with each other. So unless we look at a systemic view and only sort of focus on one or the other ministry, we'll always just solve one part of the problem, creating another problem somewhere else. And I must say that the role of the government and why then G20 becomes very important cannot be overstated when it comes to fixing our food system. I'll just give you 3 stats here. Starting from India, almost 60% of Indian population, 800 million people, still rely on a public distribution system for some of their food needs on a monthly basis. Now that is the level of people that you can touch if you make some changes in that public distribution system, which is the government-run program. Just another example from another part of the world, US here. Every year, US spends on average $16 billion in the form of subsidies to farmers. And these goes primarily for 4 major crops: corn, soybean, wheat, and sugar. Now that is a huge lever in terms of the economic incentive that can be changed in order to arrive at better outcomes for the food system. Third example, now this is the global picture. Almost 600 billion in terms of farm support, agriculture support is provided by the countries, and some of the major countries, 2/3 of the global production represented by these countries. And if you look at where this money is going, only about 5% goes in terms of ecological restoration on farms and around farms. 70% goes as income support. Can we link some ecological incentives, some environmental incentives, some health and nutrition incentives to that income support that we are extending? And that can incentivize millions of farmers across the globe to change the way they are doing farming as of today. Coming to G20, 80% of the global food trade happens within the G20 countries. 60% of the world agriculture land is within G20 countries. So their role cannot be overstated in terms of changing our food system. And there are, of course, Matera Declaration that happened about 3.5 years ago. And there are the global alliances for food security that have been promoted via G20. And now it is heartening to see that Brazil is trying to promote this global alliance on closing food poverty and hunger. But there have been also a lot of existing commitments. There have been commitments to reduce the land degradation by 50% by 2040. there are almost 126 commitments that have happened between 2008 and 2020 towards agriculture and food security within G20 forums. I think what the mantle should be this year and going forward, and I'd love if Brazil can take that mantle forward, is how do we convert these commitments into action on the ground? I think that's where real game is. And I really look forward to some strong outcomes emerging from this G20. And with that, let me close my remarks. Thank you. Thanks once again for having me here. I look forward to the remaining conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. These slides were the data that you showed us. Of course, some of them we knew, but there are some very impressive remarks here and data. And that slide of the diets worldwide coming to the center and becoming similar is very impressive, because we are always talking about this. And seeing this in this graphic is very impressive, and all the other information you shared. And I believe there are some questions here that you could answer in the Q&A box if you could, Abhishek. And there is especially people asking. I know that it's in Portuguese, so I try afterwards to support you answering also. But people are asking about the concept of monotony. So I will move to our next speaker, and we'll try to explain it for you during this debate. So moving to our second panelist of this second panel, Ms. Claudia Martinez. Claudia Martinez is the co-chair of Colombia Programs of the Food and Land Use Coalition, the FOLU. Claudia has more than 30 years of practical experience in sustainable development, finance, and climate change. She's also the director of E3, Ecology, Economics, and Ethics, supporting programs and actions to foster sustainable development, new economies, and financial schemes. Claudia will speak about food systems and the climate emergency, a necessary interconnection, especially in the Global South. So thank you, Claudia, for your time, for being here with us today. And I pass over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juliana, and thank you all the speakers who have already given very exciting presentations. I'm going to also share my screen. Hold on. Oops. Are you seeing it?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Hold on. Just putting it in large. Okay. So obviously, facing monotony in the food systems is a very large topic. I just want to introduce the Food and Land Use Coalition. The Food and Land Use Coalition was launched in 2017 by some partner institutions that are in the graphic to accelerate the transition of food systems, obviously impacting the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreements, and the Global Biodiversity Framework. We sort of create these alliances of policymakers, farmers, civil society to unlock collective action on food systems. We're in different countries of the world, one of which is Brazil. And so we're acting together to sort of push food systems in a joint action. Let's start by understanding that food systems have all the connections with the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 2,000 million hectares of degraded agricultural land. There are threatened species, around 62%. 80% of large marine ecosystems are subject to significant eutrophication. The FOLU sector contributes to 30% of the greenhouse emissions. And from that, 80% come from what we're doing, which is a tragedy, which is food loss and waste. We have several million farmers that are obviously hunger and suffer obviously from malnutrition and hunger. And as you say, there is the tapestry around women in food systems, which have to do a lot in this regard. And the agriculture, as Ricardo was saying, causes 70% of freshwater extraction. We at FOLU in 2019 prepared a report called the Growing Better Report, and we estimated the cost of the global food systems, which is like we are producing food systems at a cost of $12 billion compared to the market value of food systems, which is $10 billion. And that obviously is putting us in a very difficult economic situation because we are just producing out of losses. And this has to do mainly with health issues, environmental issues, economic issues, and obviously other hidden costs around other subjects, like as I told you, food loss and waste. So again, the monotony of food systems. Let's start by understanding, and especially when we're speaking from Colombia, Brazil, huge biodiversity countries, that we have a lot of plants that we could eat. Humans are capable of eating 3,000 species. And in reality, as the former speaker already said, we're using very few, and very few are sort of giving us the calories we consume. Seeds are no longer produced and shared between local farmers. We have big multinational, big monocultures throughout the world. We have uniformity, through GMOs. We have reduced seeds diversity for small farmers. If you see what is happening in terms of seeds, 63% of the seeds market is controlled by four multinationals. They have been acquired, and now we have Corteva, ChemChina, Bayer, BA, SF, really sort of handling not only the seeds, but also the fertilizers and the chemicals that are used in packages to sort of manage those seeds. And we also have the reliance on chemicals, as the former speaker, Abhishek, already spoke. So crops are no longer adapted to their own environment, and we have to use more chemicals. And this obviously affects biodiversity. If you see agricultural intensification and trade, as they already said, implies soil depletion, yield decline, less crop diversity, more waste, less dietary diversity, and all forms of malnutrition, more farmed animals, expansion of and on the other side, climate change is impacting the agricultural expansion, more competition for land, reduced nutrient content, and this all comes to biodiversity loss. 40% of the world habitable land already, Abhishek told us, is used for agriculture. 30% of the agricultural land is used for croplands, and 70% of that for grazing. We have a lot of grazing throughout the world. 70% of biodiversity loss is caused by food systems. 80% of deforestation is caused by food systems, and 25% of global land surface has reduced its productivity due to soil depletion. If you see the graphic of the Living Planet of WWF, you see that 69% of the biodiversity is already lost throughout the world. And this impacts all regions because we're seeing biodiversity loss in all the regions. Unfortunately, when we see Latin America, this comes to a number of 94%, which is incredible because we have the biggest option to produce food and to sort of conserve our rich biodiversity. If you see these from the land perspective, you can see in the right-hand side the today trends. You can see the current trends in the central line, but we have to forge a better future. And that means that we have, in general, to sort of conserve 50% of the planet in different forms to be able to produce the food for 9 billion people for 2050, I'm sorry. So there is a race for land grabbing and land squeeze as well. If you see this report that just came out, which is really interesting from the EPS Food, you see that large swatches of land are being swallowed, and the land ownership is being transformed through new wages of land grabs. Here in Colombia, this is happening as we speak. Governments are facing renewed calls to deregulate their land markets and adopt pro-investor policies. We see other countries just grabbing lands in our countries and in Africa and other parts of the world that can still produce food. Agricultural investment funds grown tenfold from 2005 to 2018 and now regularly include farmland as a standalone asset class. We also see governments and large corporations that are appropriating huge swatches of land through top-down conservation schemes. And so these green grabs, as they're being called, account for around 20% of large-scale land deals. And we obviously see land conversions that are particularly damaging for food producers and communities, that are mass displays with land conflicts, with wholesales and degradation of their own environments. So yes, production has increased, but at very high cost. No, if you see all the charts, you see throughout the large decades that some of the production have increased, but as we already said, these have implied like yield declines and also soil degradation. If you see also how much amount of food is being produced to feed animals that are being, fed to feed humans, is also, ridiculous. So we have to think more how to be more efficient in terms of food systems and also how to produce more food in less land. If you see also the countries with the highest FOLU emissions, you see it in the chart. I mean, Indonesia, Brazil, India, Democratic Republic of Congo, Argentina, European Union, United States, Colombia, Australia, Ethiopia, basically because some of these countries have the highest biodiversity also in the world. And as we destroy biodiversity to produce more food, we're obviously impacting the emissions of the world. You can also see that in terms of the population in the other graphic. We don't have time to go in detail. So as Abhishek and Ricardo already said, food systems affect human health. Population facing high levels of acute food insecurity in 53 countries have increased by 34%. So this is happening as we speak. And again, malnutrition in all forms is impacting a lot of the population. So food systems affect human health. There is obviously a world crisis after the pandemic, and we're seeing these wars that are affecting food systems, and basically the poor people throughout the world are being tremendously affected. We also see severely food insecurity in a lot of countries, overweight and obesity, as the former speakers already spoke. So we at FOLU propose 10 critical transitions to transform food systems, starting from obviously stronger livelihoods and stronger populations, using and understanding more the demography of the world and the gender population of the world, and hopefully using digital revolution to sort of connect us and understanding that we're all in the same world producing food for the growing population. We want to diversify food systems through local loops and linkages. We have to produce more food closer to our homes. We have to reduce food loss and waste. If we only tackle food loss and waste, we don't have to produce food in an area as large as China. We also have to diversify protein supply. And as I told already, there's diversity of food supply from all the biodiversity of the world. And we have to think that clearly, especially in the oceans. We have to go to nature-based solutions. We have to act on productive and regenerative agriculture, protecting and restoring nature, but also doing this for healthy and productive oceans and water systems throughout the world. And if we do that, we obviously come to provide healthy diets and nutritious foods. The story that we tell in the Growing Better report is that by doing that, we have an economic price of 5.7 trillion economic dollars, and the investment that is required is very small compared to the business opportunity and to the economic price. So really transforming food systems is not that expensive, and we would have sort of enormous economic returns. I would also like to close my presentation by saying that this needs to be focused on a more regenerative conscience throughout the world. Regenerate is to restore something that has been, gone or destroyed. And we have to sort of create the places to restore what has already been lost in the world. And if you see this graphic from David Wall, I mean, we have to pass from fragmented, monotonous food systems to what we started to call sustainability, and then restoration, and then reconciliation. But really, we have to start speaking about regeneration. And this needs to unite actors throughout, the world, starting from understanding what is the sense of regenerative conscience and context, detailing agroecology, regenerative agriculture and restoration, developing integral food system policies with a regenerative vision, and obviously supporting actors and communities that are acting in regenerative models that today are very small, but we want to scale these models throughout the world. So thank you for that. And I'll leave the questions for the end, as Juliana has told us.
Thank you so much. Very impressive, Claudia, and stressing not only the loss of biodiversity, but the loss of seeds diversity. Very important to remember this. And I believe that by now, people that were not familiar with this term of food systems monotony are getting to understand what we are talking about, is the whole spectrum of the food systems that we are facing this monotony. So thank you so much for your presentation, for the data you shared. We already asked all the panelists to share with us these slides in order to us to share with the attendees and the audience the slides as they are asking us this. So thank you. And having set this huge challenge that we face today, we will now move to our final panel on experiences from the Global South. So what can be done? And we will move specifically to Mexico to listen to Alejandro Calvillo, who will share the Mexican national strategy for reducing the consumption of ultra-processed food. Alejandro Calvillo was one of the founders of Greenpeace Mexico, where he worked for 12 years. He also founded El Poder del Consumidor in 2006, a central actor from the civil society advocating for the front-of-pack warning label in Mexico and the national campaign to ban transgenic maize in Mexico. He is a member of the Lancet Commission on Obesity and was invited to the expert group on marketing aimed to children by the Pan American Health Organization. Thank you, Alejandro, for kindly joining us. I pass over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this invitation, and congratulations for this initiative, and my solidarity with the people of Rio Grande do Sul. We are facing this climate change in many ways in all countries, and I think we don't have more time to respond. I want to share very general data about our nutrition situation in Mexico. Ultra-processed food consumption in Mexico is the highest in Latin America, with more than 260 kilograms per person a year, around 160 kilograms are liters of sugar-sweetened beverage. In 2012, Mexicans appeared as the highest soda consumers in the world with 163 liters per person a year. A report from the Pan American Health Organization shows a close relation between ultra-processed food consumption and body mass index, with Mexico at the top in the ultra-processed food consumption and overweight and obesity. The human drama created by this fast and deep change in consumption of food and hydration in Mexico could be explained with one of the strongest health impacts, diabetes. In 2000, diabetes killed 46,000 persons in Mexico. In 2022, diabetes killed more than 150,000 people. It means that diabetes increased 3 times in 22 years. This is the context, and I want to share the policies that we promoted to fight this situation. In 2012, we began a campaign for a soda tax. 70% of added sugar in Mexican diet came from soda. And as I mentioned, we have the highest consumption of soda in the world. We obtained a soda tax on 2014 after a strong battle with the soda industry, the sugarcane industry, and a national association of small tenders. All these organizations were moved by one corporation, Coca-Cola. 70% of soda consumption in Mexico is Coca-Cola. By this reason, Coca-Cola has a great power in Mexico, together with FEMSA. FEMSA is the biggest bottle company of Coke in the world, and it's a Mexican corporation. Revolving doors in Mexico are common between Coke, FEMSA, and the government. I only mention that we have a president that was a former director of Coke, and we have officials that works in the regulatory institution of food and beverage that now are directors in Coke. We are talking of a corporation with a great environmental impact as the greatest plastic polluter in the world, and also one of the corporations with a big water demand and with a great control of this essential resource. The original soda proposal was 20% related with price. At the end, the tax was only 10%. Independent evaluation of the soda tax found a reduction of sales of 6% the first year and 9% the second year. We don't have more evaluations, independent evaluations. Evaluations are complex because we need to consider historical tendencies, economic growth, and also climate. The soda tax battle in Mexico was so strong because industry know that the soda tax in Mexico could create a domino effect. And this happened. After Mexico imposes a soda tax, United Kingdom, Portugal, Philippines, South Africa, India, and some cities in the United States passed a soda tax. In most cases, a soda tax of 20% or more. The international experience showed the great benefits of a strong soda tax, 20% or more, and the great potential that have to earmark these resources for the health benefits of vulnerable populations, also creating more jobs. We are fighting to increase the soda tax from 10% to at least 20%. In 2016, while we were demanding the increase of the soda tax to 20%, and at the same time asking to remove a front-of-pack leavening in food and beverage created by the industry in collision with the government, 3 of the principal public actors became infected in our cell phones by the spyware Pegasus created by the Israeli company NSO Group, a spy system bought by the Mexican government to serve the corporations. I was one of these 3 persons. Our second successful campaign is related with the front of pack level. As I mentioned, we have a front of pack level created by the industry. We initiated a judicial process against it, and we demonstrate that the regulatory authority developed this labeling in coordination with Coca-Cola. We obtained emails that showed this close relation. As I mentioned, one of the principal authorities in the regulatory institution that promoted this labeling is now Director of Government Affairs in Coke. This front of pack labeling, known as GDA, was mandatory in Mexico from 2014 until 2020. In 2020, this front of pack labeling was changed by a front of pack warning label with black octagons that advert when the product has an excess of sugar, sodium, fat, calories, and also include 2 warning sentences aimed to children that advert when the product has non-caloric sweeteners or caffeine, saying that are not recommended for children. This warning label is mandatory in Mexico since 2020, and it was a product of a working group formed by government institutions, academy, industry, United Nations institutions, PAHO and UNICEF, and civil society organizations. The design of the warning label, learning from the Chilean experience to improve it. By this reason, we include the warning phrase contains edulcorant not recommended for children, and this has a very strong impact for ultra-processed food that, in the case of Chile, moved from sugar to non-caloric sweeteners. The first octagon warning label was developed in Chile and applied in Peru and Uruguay. In Mexico, we improved it. Also, these have a very immediate impact in the reformulation of many of these ultra-processed food to reduce the quantities of warning levels, and also have an impact in the behavior of consumers to reduce the consumption of some products that before they think were health products, like some yogurts with very high levels of sugar. And we have now a reform in the general education law to remove junk food and sweetened beverage from schools, and the authority have a mandate to present the guidelines for food and beverage inside schools in the next months. Also, we have a new reglement on marketing of the health general law that protects children from marketing of unhealthy food. Also, the front of pack warning label include the prohibition of any character or element in the package that could attract children attention. If the product have only one warning label, they cannot use any character in the package. The most important legislative step happened last December with the Congress approval of the law of appropriate and sustainable food. This is a general law. I think it is possible the most ambitious law that recognizes and protects the food culture, protect the small farmers, create regional food recommendations, promote and protect agroecological system, is a deep and comprehensive law that creates an intersectorial government organism to coordinate the Ministry of Agriculture, Health, Economy, Environment under the umbrella of a food policy. In Mexico, we have a sexennium period that is ending this year. At the beginning of this sexennium, under Ministers of Agriculture, Health, Economy, and Environment create this proposal of an intersectorial food policy. They support the creation of the warning label and also push to maintain the prohibition to grow transgenic corn in Mexico. You know, we are center of origin of corn. We have more than 60 varieties of corn and to stop the import of glyphosate. But in the same government, we have powerful actors with strong links with Bayer, Monsanto, Nestlé, Coke, and other companies. Anyway, the general law approved last December for a appropriate and sustainable food was approved, and part of this law established this intersectoral organism for appropriate and sustainable food. This new law established an important criteria that we need to improve in the design, application, and monitor of all policies, the control of conflict of interest and interference from corporations that has been the principal obstacle for food and environmental policies. This interference is a great concern, is increasing at important international bodies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alejandro, for sharing this experience of Mexico. We know how difficult it is to oppose the food industry lobby, right? So congratulations for your work and the great effort in driving Mexican policy transformation. We are living a similar process in Brazil with front of package label, and as you mentioned, it definitely can trigger behavior change. So we do hope that soda tax and front of label policies will get into the mentioned policy basket of the Global Alliance Against Hunger. And it really strikes when you said that the deep increase in diabetes, as you mentioned, that was in the case in Mexico, confirms what Ricardo mentioned before about obesity increase and inequality worldwide. So it definitely is something that G20 should pay attention on. So thank you so much. And now we will move to Tanzania. And before, I will just ask Claudia if she could answer the question in the Q&A box about the difference between regenerative agriculture and agroecology, because we are now moving to Tanzania to listen about the national strategy of agroecology. And it's my pleasure to introduce you Janet Merrill, who is the co-founder and chief executive officer program of Sustainable Agriculture Tanzania, a local organization in Tanzania which over 10 years has been working to achieve the goal that smallholder farmers are able to feed their families and improve their livelihoods through agriculture in a sustainable, socially, economically viable, and environmentally friendly way. This organization is winner of the One World Award and overall winner of the inaugural Africa Agroecology Award, Best Civil Society Organization category. Congratulations, Janet, and thank you so much for finding the time to join us today. I know you were very busy, so over to you, and we will let you know when your time is ending. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. It's a great pleasure and honor to be able to join the discussions today and share a bit from the context of Tanzania and Africa. For the time I have been attending the session today, I have had very interesting initiatives from Mexico and also from Colombia. And yes, thank you, Brazil, for bringing us together today. Myself and the work with Sustainable Agriculture Tanzania, we basically have been working for about 15 years in Tanzania. We have a network of over 100,000 farmers, and our work is on regenerative, agroecological, and organic agriculture, as we believe food production should be sustainable. It should be able to empower farmers and to have farmers owning the process of food production using means that are available and accessible to them, while conserving the environment and reducing pressure on natural resources, but also being able to earn a decent livelihood from the practice of agriculture without destroying the environment and assuring future generations of being able to produce food. And as an organization, we have 4 main pillars. we have the pillar of dissemination of knowledge, whereby we do this through our Farmer Training Center, which is the first center for agroecology and organic agriculture in Tanzania that we established about 12 years ago. And we receive people from all over Tanzania and beyond. And we do trainings mostly ranging from 1 week, 2 weeks, and going forward. And this center, we are able to provide training, but also we are able to provide trainings for farmers in the field using the demonstration plot approach. And these demonstration plots are very effective for farmers as they work and also learn and exchange with each other in the field. But also there, they're able to do saving from, they're able to save together, but also to give each other small loans to invest in agriculture. And from this training, there they are able to make make compost, to do vegetable nurseries, to do plant liquid extracts for the plants to grow, but also intercropping and multiple cropping for the growth and development of the plants. So in a way, with our dissemination pillar, we are able to share practical information and work with farmers on the ground to help transform food systems in Tanzania. And we also practice agroecological farming at our training center. And we also carry out research together with some agriculture research institution. And here, this research takes place in the field with farmers. Now, going forward, in Tanzania, we have been able, as a movement, of course, together with other organizations, we've been able to together with the government, to work on a strategy which is called the National Ecological Organic Agriculture Strategy. And this was a process of about 3 years, and it was finalized last year and launched. So actually, we are now in the implementation of this strategy, which has 12 strategic objectives, and it is in line with agroecological principles, but also organic farming principles as a basis and the foundation, which enables mainstreaming of ecological organic agriculture in Tanzania. As you know, so in Africa and in Tanzania and African countries, there is a big push. There's a big push for transformation and also ownership and sovereignty of the food system. And so we are happy for us in Tanzania to be one of the very first countries that have a national strategy, which also inspires and can be replicated, but also other countries can follow suit and work with their governments to make sure that they have such legal frameworks for agroecology or for organic agriculture, for more resilient and sustainable food systems. For us, the strategy currently, it's for a period of 8 years. And so far, we have prioritized 6 major intervention areas. And these areas will be implemented or will be put into use this year. And we have an implementation task force that has the mandate to work to implement this strategy, especially with the first 6 implementation interventions that have been prioritized. And the task force composes government, but also civil society organizations and actors in agroecology and organic agriculture, which is important for co-creation, collaboration, and working together for food systems transformation. And also, I would like to take this opportunity to inspire, to say a word of inspiration, because for us in Tanzania, we say it has been years, it's more than 15 years of work to transform food systems, but also to mainstream agroecological food systems and organic food systems at national level. And so far, apart from the strategy, we have a curriculum at higher learning institutions for university, but also for colleges, where there are courses on organic agriculture, but also on agroecology, which are trained or taught to students. And this is important to be able to scale agroecology by ensuring that there is the right knowledge available, but also to make sure that research is carried out and there is further growth and development of farming systems to make them more sustainable, more applicable for the local context, and that the people, the Tanzanians, are at the forefront and on this process. And now with climate change and all the challenges we've been experiencing, we just had a very big flood situation because we had very extreme rainfall. And at the moment, we just got internet back. We did not have internet for about 4 days in Tanzania due to a problem in the ocean. But you see, there's so many challenges, some foreseen, but also unforeseen challenges. But we all know with climate change, if we take the right action that is recommended by the International Panel on Climate Change, but also by experiences like, for example, what we have made on the ground with farming systems which are resilient and sustainable and contributing to mitigation of climate change, we are able to change first how farming is done at the local area. We are able to transform the landscapes, and we are able to reduce the severity of destruction on the environment and the production of greenhouse gases that destroy the ozone layer. So agroecology, and especially with the National Ecological Organic Agriculture Strategy for Tanzania, is one of the ways towards helping to feed the growing population of Tanzania in a way that is healthy, nutritious, and safe for the environment, while assuring reliable income for the households of farmers who are involved in farming, while assuring ownership of the farming process in the country, and while maintaining our sovereignty, our food culture and tradition. And this is our way and it's our way and our offer towards producing and supplying food. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janet, and congratulations for your work on mainstreaming, as you mentioned, agroecology and food sovereignty, and advocating for Tanzania policies toward ecological, organic agriculture. I hope I got the correct expression. So this is very important for stressing, and as you mentioned, the importance not only to give credit for smallholder farmers, but also technical and training assistance for this ecological transition, and also the importance of collaboration among governments and civil society for that goal. I hope that it's really an inspiration for the whole continent and the whole world, and for you that are watching us today. So thank you so much. Now, last but not least, let's come back to Brazil, to the state of Pará, the city of Santarém, one of the 43 cities participating at the Brazilian Lab on Urban Food Policies, our beloved Lupa, Yara Elizabeth Souza Ferreira. Yara is a pedagogue and coordinator of food and nutrition education at Education Office in the municipality of Santarém. Muito obrigada, Yara, por estar aqui com a gente,
Thank you so much, Yara, for being here with us, replacing Yolanda, and facing this challenge of the connection that Janet was facing before. You have the microphone now. You can share your beautiful experience of the Santarém with us.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in this event with so many experiences being shared from many countries, and seeing these actions which try to overcome these issues related to food insecurity, hunger, malnutrition, and everything that has been causing harm to humanity. And here in Santarém, the state of Pará, tackling the food monotony, we have here a presentation for all of you, showing you a little bit of our territory. Santarém, in the west of Pará state, in the middle of the Amazon, with the rivers Tapajós and Amazonas, crossing the town. with around 18,000 square kilometers extension, around 332 inhabitants. And here we have the demographic density of around 18%. The scholarization of around 97% and 0.691% of longevity, education, and income. So it's a population that, even though we have many different factors and problems and challenges, we end up using education as a tool for change of this reality. And here are my colleagues here speak, talking about these challenges, these crises, the catastrophe that doesn't happen only here in Brazil. In the south, we also have this in the north with droughts and floods, and the biggest drought that happened, it has a great impact because it's a nature phenomenon, but it's also a consequence of our human actions, and it ends up impacting the food system because nature suffers with this. And then we have a lack of food and water and all of these problems. So to talk about food monotony, so imagine you have to eat the same meal for a very long time and not having another option to have a more adequate meal, safer food, healthier food that can actually nourish your organism. So imagine yourself in this situation. We can find the situation in the world still because it's a result of a long historical process of denialism, of all of these problems that affect humanity in relation to social inequality, in relation to food inequality, in relation to everything that is the human right, especially food, which should be available for everyone. So let's go to the next slide because I want to show you all that on the opposite side of food monotony we have here in the Amazon universe in Santarém, Pará. I want to show you that the production in the familial family farming is very strong and there's a big incentive to the family, and our food base is here, and we have the manioc or the cassava is the base of this food, and we have the vegetables, which is very diverse and colorful. And you can see here the very colorful markets. We have a market that goes over the river, and you can see here the fish because we have a big diversity here of fish in our regions. Because here we have different territories and different realities, but this is a reality for all of us, this diversity. But even though we have this food diversity, all of this is being threatened because you know that the Amazon, especially talking about Santarém here, when you go up the rivers, you go to the communities, the indigenous territories, quilombola territories, traditional communities. And in all of these places, we have these threats related to the gold mining, which is still mined illegally. So they contaminate our rivers, the drought that also causes a lack of the fish, the animals. And when the river starts to rise, this is a cycle. The fish start to come back. Nature cures itself, but we need to care for nature. And we all need to be accountable for this in G20 in all of the world's movements and institutions, because all of this is being threatened. The flowers have gotten up to 18 reais the price. Why was this? Because we lost a lot of the farms that we had. So these are impacts that is not only in nature and from nature, but it's caused by this climate crisis and all this craziness that's been happening with nature. And we still have access on our tables for children. We still have some access to this diversity. I wanted to show you this richness, this diversity, all the vegetables and plants, the fish, and show the people that feed us and feed many other countries because a lot of it is exported. You can go to the next slide, please. So talking about food-based and education or nutrition-based and education, and talk a little bit about our territory with the urban zone, the river zone, to have Arapiuns, Tapajós, Arapixuna, Lago Grande, Várzea rivers, which is a different reality there in Várzea, different calendar. Indigenous territories, we have 14 peoples, we have the Quilombos. So this diversity, this populational diversity is part of our education as well. And we offer them the school nutrition. Nowadays, we have 438 school units, 88,000 students, and this can even be a higher number because there's been a big movement to boost this, not in the municipal network of schools, but also the state school network. We supply through BENAI the food for the schools with its specific programs. Promoting a school nutrition committed to quality nutrition and food safety of our students. We have children that start in kindergarten and up to junior high in the traditional communities, indigenous communities, and quilombola communities, both part-time and full-time schools. Nowadays, we have a lot of more schools with that are full-time, and so we have this challenge as well because it's a big there's a big demand in the Santarém municipality, and nowadays our nutrition and our food comes from the family farming with natural juices, flour, manioc flour, cassava flour, vegetables that are from a region. So that's what the children eat. We have the pumpkin, we have cassava, beans, spaghetti, rice, proteins. So nowadays, we can offer our students a healthier meal because many of them, especially the vulnerable families, the children from this family, the food that they get is at school. And of the actions that we have to fight vulnerability, food vulnerability, in Benai, we have the municipality actions to fight food vulnerability. We have the PAA, which is a program of food acquisition to promote the access to food and to incentivize family farming in Santarém. Last week, we had 800 families in food unsafety situation, and we helped them with 40 tons of food from family farming. We also support people who are homeless, shelters for the elderly and children in social vulnerability situations. By offering these foods that are part of our daily consumption, all of this diversity that you saw in our markets, in these pictures, all of this production that you can see here, you can see the fruits, you can see the diversity of fruits as well that we have. All of this is offered in the schools, and it incentivizes the family farming and the families. And I like to thank Rezende, who's bringing a healthier food to our children with a better quality, food safety, and promoting the nutrition of these children so they can especially not get sick so frequently, because we have some cases of children who are born with diabetes. We need to fight that. We need to tackle these problems that happen due to food unsafety or for the lack of some types of food, of healthier food and diverse food. You can go to the next slide, please. Our biggest focus is to help people who are suffering with food unsafety. And I want to tell you that we're very thankful to be here listening to all of you with different experiences and to see that it is a big challenge, but we can create this alliance, we can learn with each other, and we can all work together. That's our challenge. It's a big challenge, but I believe that we will be able to overcome these challenges to get to our goal, which is promoting the human right to adequate food and safe food for everyone. Of course, caring for an environment, improving the foods that are offered to children against the ultra-processed food, which is a big issue in the schools because sometimes the parents want to send the soda or cookies instead of incentivizing the children to eat in a healthier manner with fruits, vegetables, and a better quality food in general. So thank you very much.
Muito obrigada, Yara, porque a gente
Thank you,
sabe
Yara, because we know that Brazil is recognized by its innovative legislation and the school food program, free and universal, using family farming, but the implementation of public policy involves a lot of challenges. And we know that Santarém, like other cities in the north region of the country, have a big challenge in relation to logistics. It's a big challenge to get the public policies happening in these places within the traditional communities. So I congratulate you for this effort because we depend on the implementation of policies that are already very beautiful in writing, but we need vigilant civil society, public administrators, and usually these are women who are very committed, very sympathetic, and working, they're all working hard to get the results and showing that the PNI, which is the Brazilian school meal program, it can be used not only to benefit family farming, but also with biodiverse production, local, and which also can feed within the needs of the local communities. So congratulations on your work.
Thank you so much, Yara. Santarém is doing a great job with the school feeding program in Brazil. And now, ending this great debate, I finally invite Fernanda Machiavelli, the Vice Minister of Agrarian Development and Family Farming in Brazil, for her closing remarks. Fernanda has a PhD in political science from the University of São Paulo and is a fellow at the Rockefeller Center for Latin American Studies at Harvard University. For 11 years, she has been a specialist in public policies and government management for the federal government. And since last year, she is the Executive Secretary and Vice Minister of Agrarian Development and Family Agriculture in Brazil, with the responsibility of coordinating the reconstruction of public policies aimed at family farming, agrarian reform, land governance, and food supply. Thank you so much, Fernanda, for joining us, for saving this time for us. You know, you are working hard, especially right now, to face what's going on in the Rio Grande do Sul. So thank you, over to you, and I will let you know when your time is ending. Thank you.
Obrigada, Juliana.
Thank you, Juliana. Thank you for the invitation of the Comida do Amanhã, Food of Tomorrow. It's very good to be here, part of this debate. Was able to take part, to follow the presentations that happened in the morning. And it was a very rich process of exchange and knowledge and visions. I'm going to share my presentation. Yes, I'm already sharing. Yes, we can see it. It's a huge satisfaction to be here, being part of this debate within the C20 about the monotony of food system. We have been using this system to discuss the vision that we have for this problem and the direction we are aiming to mitigate this problem. Besides the alliance against poverty and hunger that Sally mentioned, we have the agriculture task force in the G20. I have been discussing these issues for the first time. We have a meeting that focused exclusively on the familiar agriculture for the transformation of the agro food system. And it is what I'd like to talk here and finish this discussion, bringing these actors that are so important. It is a little of what I would like to share with you. So this diagnosis, we have been through this during the morning, and there is a consensus nowadays that we have agro food system, very monotonous, that has concentrated the production in small cultures. And besides that, we have the process of land concentration that happens in the world, but in Brazil, it's so big, much bigger. So just to illustrate and reinforce a little of I'm speaking a little low. So in order to reinforce some of these points that we saw this morning, in fact, Brazil has one of the energy matrices, the highest in the world, the cleanest in the world, but our emissions, they increase because of the livestock and agriculture, and it's some of the things we are focusing in the government to surpass that. So it's a satisfaction to share with you. Most of Brazilians know that, but last year we were able to decrease in 51% the deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. It was a result of a huge joint of the linking of many things that were done, and we have to do that because of the families that live near the Amazon forest, and especially the ones that they live in the forest and they use the forest for their food. And something else we have to talk about is the result, the decreasing of the undernutrition, and we talked about food safety and the increasing of obesity in Brazil. We have a very satisfactory result. We were able to remove 24 million of people of these food unsafety, the Brazil without food plan, without hunger plan, and politics of sustainable production, food productions, and the challenge is very good. It's not only to reduce the hunger, we need to provide a healthy diet based on the It's one of the public policies that we have in Brazil. In the end, the issue about the rural poverty, it's acceptable, but these are the people who produce our food. It's most of these people, they are in the poverty line. So we are discussing the ways that we are working, the increase the diversity of the products that we cultivate in Brazil, in a diverse, making it diverse of the cultures, and a production that goes through the inclusion of these family agricultures in the poverty situation. For those who are not from Brazil, what is the family farming in Brazil? It's a very important debate. Some countries, they have conceptions and visions that are distinct from this family farming. And it's important to say that it is part of 70% of this rural areas. It's a very important part of the food production, especially what is consumed in Brazil internally. And this responsibility of 70% of the production, it occupies 25% of the productable area in Brazil. So the size of the properties, it varies a lot in Brazil. We're talking about if you want to be a family farming, it needs to get at least 4 modules, from 4 until 400 acres in Amazon. The proportions are very different of those of the other countries. So it's an interesting debate we had in the meeting about the family farming in the G20 meeting. Of course, in the North region, they are bigger because you can just produce in the 20% of the territory, the other 80% of the area, it's destined to the conservation, and these proportions, they are different from state to state and region to region, even within each state. And we included in the family farming concept the traditional family, indigenous people, women, rural youth, fishermen, people who live near the rivers, activists, and there are a series of a diversity of groups that are considered family farming in Brazil. In Brazil, it's important to highlight the factors that contribute to the monotony of our food system is the concentration of land. To synthesize the information that you're seeing here, 1.4% of our rural properties, they concentrate 60% of the rural territory in Brazil. So those are properties with more than 1,000 hectares in this case. They're going to be 60% of our territory. So at the same time, when we look at the smaller properties from 1.1 until 50 hectares, they occupy 9% of our territory. So I'm talking about these 2 columns. So if you look at the ones with up until 10 hectares, if you add to the other ones, you reach the 9%. So 70% of the rural population, they occupy less than 30% of the area. So the land concentration induces this monotony process because this production is based on the monoculture. What Brazil has been doing to transform our agro-food system is to reinforce the role in this population that conserves our social biodiversity and produces the diverse and healthy products. And they do that with much less impact of the environment. We're talking about a more resilient agriculture, and it has been here for a long time because they can produce the food and maintain a way of production that doesn't harm that much the environment. So we need to intensify, and we have been doing this intense work to have this agricultural transition to a more regenerative process. And the systems that have been implemented, most of them, they have been talked about. A program that we are so proud of that is the National School Feeding Program and Food Acquisition Program. It's a reference not only because it guarantees the food safety of kids in Brazil. Most of them, they have in the food, in the school, a meal, the main meal of the day. And it is also a program that stimulates the family farming production, having in mind that 30% of this production comes from this small or middle scale production. And Saulo mentioned the issue, the point about our decree that made the basic products, they updated the basic products list. They removed the ultraprocessed, and now we have a very amazing list that makes our eyes shine with much better products, with more diverse. We have this national food supply policy recently created. We are increasing the food supply so we can fight the food unsafety and make sure that quality food can go to the urban areas, the peripheries, and with a fair price. At the same time that they can give a fair income to those who produce the food. In the sustainable production area, we have a CONAP, is a national program for family farming. It's the biggest in history, and we are incentivizing in a very interesting way the food production. We are working for the mechanization, the machinery of sustainable production of these families, and making sure they have access to the technology. At the same time, they are increasing the productive capacity, and at the same time, we won't go through the areas in a much more sustainable way with technologies and the diverse cultures we have here. And in the end, the agroecology and social biodiversity that's going to be launched in July is the third plan, that it's part of a huge policy of ecological transition, focusing on family farming.
And finally, in the past month, we launched a program called Our Land, which is a program for land and territory access, allocating resources and mapping public lands, and operate in different types of acquisitions for private lands, for the agrarian reform program, especially for the Afro-descendant communities in Brazil, which are called the quilombolas. So with this program, we'll be able to amplify it and start a agrarian reform program in our country, which I mentioned yesterday before. It has a lot of concentration of land. We've been working with a lot of focus in the strengthening of the productive inclusion of women. Many programs that involves access to microcredit, technical assistance, and we launched a program to promote productive yards, which is a small-scale production in houses that will guarantee the food security of that family, and will be able to produce proteins to medicinal plants or whatever that plant or plants that family will be using. We have Marcha das Margaridas. There was a movement of 100,000 rural women that went to Brasilia to ask for a specific financing line so they can associate care activities with productive activities through these productive gardens. The rural microcredit in Brazil is a reference. We have more than 1 million of contracts. It's subsidized credit, and it goes to the poorest families in the rural areas. And for the women, we doubled the value of the microcredit in this program with a very meaningful impact in the Northeast region of our country. And I mentioned, I give an overview of the public policies that are being implemented, especially focusing in the family farming. And we are discussing within G20, what can we do as humans to tackle the monotony of the food systems, thinking about the different points that need to be mentioned and changed within the system that has been producing unsatisfactory results. Brazil nowadays is a big exporter of food items. We went from an importer to an exporter decades ago because we had a lot of technology development, and some of them are referencing sustainability, like the integration between the farm and forest. This process also generated a great reduction in the diversity of the production, also in the family farming, because nowadays they're producing corn and soy. So to transform this, we will need a lot of public policy tools, not just the traditional public policies, but also a new generation of public policies that integrate the agriculture elements, environment elements, and food security elements. So we can not only increase our food production, but also we need to do this in a sustainable, regenerative manner. And this food needs to get to those who need it the most, so we can feed all of the Brazilian families with good quality products, diverse foods that are produced in a way that generate income, health, and work in the rural area in our country. So we have a lot of challenges, and I think that this exchange that we're having here is going to be very important so we can improve, find the obstacles, learn with each other, listen to civil society and to the academia, so we can improve our tools and design new policies and interventions that can allow us to adjust the path of our food systems, agri-food systems. I'd like to thank Professor Ricardo Abramovay, who with other researchers has been working with this theme of monotony, and this has been impacting the federal government, and the debate between the academia, civil society, and the government through the different organizations and the National Council for Sustainable Development, for example. So all of this allows us to adjust our paths, and so we can advance faster and overcome the obstacles in a quicker way. So I'd like to thank you all for all of this partnership. Thank you, Fernanda. And it's really a pleasure to see so many deliverables that the Agrarian Ministry has been giving us since last year, and see that there is a systemic approach that understands the food system and the MDA, MDS, the Ministry of the Cities as well now. When we talk about the suburbs, I think this is linked to what Abhishek mentioned before about the difficulty of coherence between the public policies and that these issues are treated separately. So I think this is a good example of how the Brazilian government has been addressing this. And congratulations for your work, and we're very thankful for your presence here.
Actually, I want to thank everyone, the panelists. It was a great debate, very impressive data and information that was shared today. I saw that many of the questions were already answered, but maybe we still have time for two quick answers. I saw that there were a lot of questions addressing cozinha solidária, solidarity kitchens or community kitchens, and food and loss, food waste, and how it could connect with the G20 work. I'm not sure if Saulo or Tiago could maybe the two of them address. I know that this is not the topics that are being dealing nationally are not exactly the ones that are being on the international debates of G20, but maybe make it more clear how the other organizations and researchers could interact with the G20 work. So, Saulo, se você se sentir à vontade para dar só uma resposta sobre
So,
isso.
Saulo, if you could give an answer about that and Tiago could complement, that would be interesting.
About the community kitchens, I can answer in the chat. I think that the incentive of the governments for these kitchens, it's very important, and it's been done recently. It can be maybe included in the basket of policies. And obviously, the community kitchens, they have connections with other politic areas. And this inclusion of these policies, it should be done by the MDS. I think in Brasilia, in our capital, it's the ministry responsible for the thing, but it can be suggested by the organizations of the civil society that we have talked about. So this basket of policies will be a live instrument, not going to be finalized now at the launching of the Global Alliance. It can be improved and complemented on the next months. The only things we have defined were the criteria and especially the tools that will be there, the instruments. So I think that's it. Tiago would like to say something else about the questions about participation in the G20. Well, I think the participation in the G20 can be done by the C20, the T20, and other groups, but I would like to conclude thanking everyone that had their presentations and presented their data. The Yara and Fernanda's slides, they were so beautiful, and they showed how our food system can be alive and vibrant. And the matter of the food issue can be accessed in many ways. Yeah, we can even listen to you, Thiago. So we have opportunities of investment, as Claudia demonstrated, opportunities of transformation, as other colleagues talked. But a very important aspect is that we invest on the combat of the hunger, or in invest in a diverse food system, in intelligent investment. So the latest data, they demonstrate that Latin American and Caribbean, they spend in average by year 6.5% of their GOP to deal with overweight, obesity, and subnutrition and other issues derived from the food system. On the other hand, provide food to all healthy food to all these countries of these regions would be 0.5% of their GOP. So it is so important. We need to think about other kinds of waste. For example, the monetary waste. We need to find important and necessary things to deal with the public health issues and climate crisis. Not to mention, of course, not. We need to mention the things that are so important to us, which is the society. It's a very good reminder between the investment. I'm going to ask if Ricardo could address. There are some questions from Deborah about climate change, the influence of the nutritional quality of the food. She had asked about the medication, about diabetes, and as well, and also there was a question that Abhishek has already answered, and how to address the combat to the lobby of the food industry. There are some other. So with you, Ricardo, I'm gonna start from your last question. It's been so important, the mobilization of the actionists of the big companies in the sense of changing their behaviors, the company's behavior. For example, in Nestlé, there was a demand of a group that was mobilized by 4 investment funds with a capital of $4 trillion. So Nestlé would accelerate the reduction, speed up the reduction of ultra-processed product in the world. So in Latin America, we know when there were important reports that Nestlé adds more sugar to the products sold in Latin America than in Europe and the United States. This pressure from the action is a reflection of the civil society's pressure. Our friend from India, Abhishek, emphasized that, and he also emphasized a very important aspect, which is the resistance of part of the agro world in the transformation of the agroecological transformation of this agro food system. For example, European Union with the program Farm to Fork was the most ambitious global transitioning and transformation program in ecological, because they would promote the reduction of pesticide, the reduction of ultra-processed food, and this program was terminated. Brazil, India, Tanzania, Mexico will have the conditions to lead globally this ecological transformation of these agro-food systems. So that needs to be the ambitions of our country in the G20. We were responsible in the case of Brazil for the implementation of the most important transformation in agro industry of the world. The model is over, but we have all the conditions with the countries present in this event, for example, to promote a transformation that G20 needs to show to the world that it's that there's no way back. About the nutritional content of the food, I don't know that technically. My friend João Furtado from WWF, he has been working on this theme, and I think WWF has a report showing the decrease on the nutritional richness because of the monotony of the food system and the adding of chemical products to this food. Juliana, thank you so much. Congratulations.
To all our group, our team, but especially you, Comida da Manhã, for the organization of this event. And I'd like to say that this is an event that I'm a person who's already knows a lot about this theme. I learned a lot today. So I'd like to thank all of the participants. We had very interesting and full of information presentations, and I hope this can get to G20 in the proposals, and it's the intention of the Brazilian government to amplify the mobilization of science, civil society, and the companies that are responsible for this, so we can have a healthy and sustainable agri-food system. Thank you very much, Ricardo. We would like to thank you for being here, and José de Castro, Chair, for supporting this big panel.
Check. Because he mentioned something that is very important when we are thinking about policy design, that is the shift in mental models. And I know that Larissa asked you about it. You already answered her about how we should shift mental models. But I do wish to give you the time to share a little bit more about it, because it should be taken into account when designing policies to transform food systems, right? So would you comment on this, Abhishek, please?
Great. Thanks a lot, Juliana, and very, very interesting discussion overall. Really enjoyed it. I think a couple of things. One is like what all mental models we need to shift that we should slowly start surfacing. I think the link between the human health and the food system and our agriculture system is very weak right now in terms of policymakers appreciating that. Most of our health policies are really reactive in nature rather than preventive. And we need to strongly establish that mental model shift. And similarly, I talked about soil, and there are many others. I think what has worked in our experience in some cases is to constantly bring the message to system leaders and influencers in different ways that can gel well with them. For some people, data is a way to get them interested and attracted. For others, it is the stories from the ground. So bringing actually farmer champions into the international forums and they talking about their own experiences sometimes move ministers. Yet another way is to take the influencers and leaders onto the ground, into the field, and so on. But really working with various outreach and communication channels to keep harnessing or keep sort of pushing few messages with a consistent language, consistent phrasing, over time brings about this shift. But targeted stakeholder engagement, system leaders engagement is important. And we are slowly doing this with concerted narrative building efforts here in India. Hopefully, we'll soon see some outcomes emerging from those mental model shifts.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this great tips. And I think we are approaching the very end, but just 1 minute to Fernanda, if she could, to answer the question about from Karen. Fernanda, ela te pergunta a respeito dos planos nacionais.
Fernanda, we would like to ask you about the hegemonic, if there's perspective in each system sector, like the fertilizers and the different fertilizers, how can we fight this and have an agroecological transition?
She's on mute.
Acho que você ainda está no mudo.
She's still on mute? No?
Tá. Aquele probleminha.
Just a technical problem with the headphone.
I will ask the other questions that maybe haven't been answered. That please write to us comida info at comidadoamanhã.org, info@comidadoamanhã.org, e a gente pode respondê-los posteriormente.
And then we can answer you afterwards and then share the slides. Fernanda?
Acho que ainda não.
Not yet.
Não te escutamos, que pena.
We don't listen, we can't listen to you. What a shame.
Não te escutamos. Você já não está
Well,
mais no mudo, mas
you're not, your microphone is open, but we cannot listen. I don't know if maybe someone in the technical area here can solve the problem.
Ok. Bem, se você puder responder por escrito.
Well, if you can, Fernanda, if you can answer, write the answer.
Write your answer to Karen from acho que da Universidade de Santa Catarina. I will really appreciate. And I believe we will need to close this event right now. So I would like to thank all the panelists again for their important contributions today. this discussion is a very important one, and we really need to take the opportunity of G20 to raise the topic. I extend my gratitude once again to Cátedra Josué de Castro de Sistemas Alimentares Saudáveis e Sustentáveis, da Universidade de São Paulo, SEBRAP, Sustentabilidade, a INCT Combate à Fome,
INCT Combat to Hunger, Institute of Defense of the Consumers, Institute Zero Hunger, Institute Climate.
We would like to acknowledge the T20 support in hosting this event as part of subtopic 2, Fostering Food Security and Nutrition Through Sustainable Food Systems, of Task Force 1, Fighting Inequalities, Poverty and Hunger. Many thanks to the T20 support and also to the C20 support. Mariana was here with us. So thank you. It's very important to keep this debate among these engagement groups and the policy recommendations. These groups will launch by July this year. And actually we will, based on the discussions we held today, all the organizers here will produce a position paper that will have the potential to influence the T20 and C20's policy recommendations or communiques by July, that will be put together to influence the G20 agenda. The co-organizers, and this is just a final note, the co-organizers of this event will work on two other events, probably in-person events, maybe in Brasilia and then in Rio de Janeiro, to keep this conversation and this debate going. We will let you know the next schedule for these events. So thank you all for attending us. Thank you for the questions you put. I'm sorry for those who were not answered right now. Please contact us for any other information. Also, many thanks to the interpreters and to the team working on the technical support. This event will remain available on YouTube at the channel of Comida do Amanhã and the other organizers as well. And for those who are interested in keeping tracking on how food systems discussions are placed in G20, Comida do Amanhã and Cátedra Josué de Castro are launching a website that brings together information on the subject. The site will be constantly updated and can be visited at Comida do Amanhã and Cátedra Josué de Castro main websites. We will share the specific link for this informations of G20 and the food systems agenda. Thank you so much. Thank you once again, and have a nice day. Bye-bye. Obrigada.